Denji really wants to touch some boobs, but first, he's gonna have to get this pussy.
Powerful Nerdcast assemble!
Stay dandy, baby. The blood and guts go flying in the third episode of Chainsaw Man. Another ridiculously fun episode, which still makes me scratch my head and wondering why this series is loved so much. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm still getting a ton of entertainment value from Chainsaw Man, but so far I have to say that I'm not in love with the series quite yet. I have a feeling that this is going to be something of a slow burn kind of series. A lot of that is owed to the characters themselves, in particular Denji. I just can't really get super attached to him quite yet. He's a real simple character with simple desires. He just wants to live a good life and, of course, to touch some knockers. And as a dude myself, I get it. I see the appeal. I totally understand his motivation, but it makes him kind of a not so interesting character, despite the fact that his benefactor Makima really does see him as an interesting character. A lot of that is owed to the fact that he simply is a chainsaw devil, and that's really what's great about this episode. The devil truly is in the details. There's a lot of background elements and lore building in this episode, which I think are a little more interesting than the actual characters themselves, and I think that's what really made this one. That and of course the really slick, kick-ass action scene at the very end, and of course the brand new ending theme, which I didn't even realize that every episode was going to have its very own specific ending, and this one was just metal as all hell, featuring the return of one of my favorite anime bands, Maximum the Hormone. You might remember them. They've done some of my favorite songs, such as their Frieza song, and not to mention doing the second opening to the Death Note anime series. And here they bring us an ending which I think might as well be the intro because it kicked all sorts of ass. I love that we're going to get a new ending with every single episode because one, it means new music, but two, it basically means we're going to get like our own little Chainsaw Man music video at the end of every single episode, and I really do think that they're kind of a reflection of the actual episode that they're in, and that one fit really perfectly into this one right here. But let's talk about some of the finer details of this episode, opening up from the end of the last one where we saw that Power had just destroyed the sea cucumber devil. Apparently she gets in trouble for this because this was something that was being hunted by someone else. You're not supposed to encroach on other people's work, and that could actually get them arrested. You can see here that Makima is really grilling Power, but not doing so in a loud, over-the-top manner. Just her overall presence is enough to sort of put Power in a bad mood, and they sort of go throughout the entire episode showing that, yes, she is sort of subjugated by her and the entire public safety organization. She's effectively been captured and trapped by this organization, but most importantly, we actually get a bit of motivation from her character in this episode as well, and just like Denji, it's kind of ridiculous at first. She basically just wants to get her lost pet cat back. And while this might seem unimportant at first, it actually allows her to have a connection with Denji, who of course had a very strong connection with his pet, Pochita, who now lives within him and allows him to transform into a chainsaw devil. And that's when Power makes the interesting prospect. She says that if Denji can help her get her cat back, she will allow him to fondle her boobs. What I can say is that this scene was absolutely hilarious because before all of this was even mentioned, he was pretty dismissive of everything that Power was doing, but when he learned that he had the opportunity to actually feel her boobs, well, he jumped right on board, going into death revenge mode, trying to take out this monster which took this cat away. We even get a little flashback of getting to see Power in the past where she was more of a rampaging devil, just killing everything in her path, and we get to see that she actually met this random withered cat, which she ended up growing quite attached to. Originally with the intent of potentially killing or eating it, eventually she learned that there are certain things in this world that she can actually love without having to kill or devour them. And then randomly we have the appearance of a new devil, the Bat Devil, this giant monstrous humanoid bat creature which has been severely damaged, and it ends up kidnapping this cat from Power, demanding that it bring it a human sacrifice so that of course it can heal its wounds. This brings us back to the present where Power is currently, as both her and Denji arrive at this mysterious house in the middle of nowhere where the Bat Devil lives, and we get to learn that this was actually all a trick from Power. She actually ends up knocking out Denji, intending to use him as the sacrifice, and the Bat Devil is not too thrilled about this. He's a very picky eater, as they make that very clear in this episode, but he still manages to take some of Denji's blood, which allows him to regrow his arm and go on a massive rampage, but not before taking her cat Meowie, as well as Power herself, and devouring them whole before making his way to a city, which of course is a segue to a big, awesome action scene. Now, it was made very clear in the last episode and this one that Denji doesn't necessarily want to transform into Chainsaw Man, and that's because he's going to lose a lot of blood in the process. But in this episode, he simply has no choice. He ends up grabbing onto the Bat Devil, transforming in a really great sequence, and they end up having an amazingly awesome fight in this city, where he gets to show that he's actually kind of a hero, saving people in the process. Not only that, but also just taking out this Bat Devil in just the most violent way possible. Like I said, this is Chainsaw Man. It's going to be violent, it's going to be crazy, and they don't hold back on any of that in this episode. Even the Bat Devil himself has some really cool moves, despite the fact that he's basically just a big, strong brute. He has this ability to fire this massive blast from his mouth, which is basically just concussive air, and he uses this against Denji, and it sends him flying, creating massive explosions and impacts. But this is when Denji snaps, realizing that all of the shit that he's gone through has not led him to his goal yet. He just wants to fondle a chick. This seems like the type of storyline that the people on Twitter are gonna hate, but you know what? Fuck Twitter. This motivation is dumb and stupid, but it leads to one of the coolest looking scenes of the entire series thus far. The look of Denji transformed into Chainsaw Man, covered in blood, his shirt flowing in the wind as he plows towards this Bat Devil, cutting it in half with all of its blood and guts exploding into the air in a massive rain of purple blood, is simply just awesome. It's guilty pleasure, over-the-top, popcorn-style anime, but honestly, it's really fun to watch, as the episode ends bringing us into the ending of this episode, which again, done by Maximum the Hormone. To me, that's like the best part of the episode. There are a few more scenes in this episode that do take the time to explain a little bit more what's going on in this world, such as Makima speaking with all of these benefactors of their group, who are a little curious about what's going on with Power and with Denji. She calls them both promising and interesting. Interesting being Denji, promising being Power. There's also whispers of things going on in America and in Russia, again, just giving us more info on the background of this world and how it's eventually going to work. I also love this really great scene between Aki and Makima as they're driving through the city, where she explains about basically how the power of devils really work. How whenever a devil is born, they're immediately given a name, and their name is basically a pun on exactly what they are. You have the bat, it's the Bat Devil. You have the Blood Devil, you have the Blood Devil. You got the Chainsaw, it's the Chainsaw Devil. But if something's like, say, a Coffee Devil, it's not going to be very strong, but something that might be a car, something that can run you over, a chainsaw, which can cut you in half, a freaking A-bomb, which can blow up everything. If it has a really intimidating name, it's going to be reflected on the power of the devil itself. So the more dangerous it sounds, the more dangerous it is. Ultimately, this entire episode was just to show the dynamic between Denji and Power, and to show that they do have a surprising amount in common with one another. They have different goals and different motivations, but their connections to their pets is kind of what sort of brings them together, despite the fact that Power betrays Denji in this episode. I have a feeling that this entire event is going to bring them a lot closer. And as for her cat Meowie and herself being swallowed by the Bat Devil, I have a feeling they're going to be just fine. They're probably going to crawl out of his guts in the next episode, because he didn't chew, he just swallowed them whole. And it would just be stupid to get rid of that character this early on, especially because Denji was just so close to his Pafu goal. So while I'm not quite seeing the bigger picture on why this series is so popular yet, again, it still manages to entertain the absolute hell out of me. I'm not super attached to any of the characters quite yet. In fact, the most intriguing one might actually be Makima. The main character's not blowing me away, but I'll be damned if he's just not really cool at the end of this episode. So still, if you're looking for some hardcore action entertainment from your anime, Chainsaw Man might be the show for you. And again, I still think it's perfectly made for the Halloween season that we're currently in right now. So I definitely think that makes it worth checking out. But you heard my thoughts on this one. If I could give a score, I'd say it's like a 3 or a 4 out of 5. I still think there were some solid moments in here, but I'm still not being blown away quite yet, but I'm definitely here for the ride. But I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this episode, so make sure to tell me all of them in the comments section below, what you thought about this episode, delving a little bit more into the backstory of Power, more of Denji's motivation, and of course what you hope to see from the rest of Chainsaw Man. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down there, baby.